In the heart of a vast and untamed wilderness, far removed from the hustle and bustle of city life, stood a small, weathered hut. This was no ordinary shelter. It was a haven for solitude and peace. The wooden walls, rough-hewn and bleached by years of sun and rain, seemed to blend seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. Tall grasses swayed gently in the breeze, framing the hut like nature's embrace. Nearby, a cluster of sturdy trees formed a protective canopy overhead, their leaves whispering secrets to one another as the wind passed through. If you enjoy this video, please like the video and subscribe for more, and tell me where you are watching from today. I always find it awesome to see where all my viewers are watching from. Let's get back to the video. Inside this secluded dwelling lived an unusual man named Thomas. He had chosen to live here away from civilization, seeking solace in the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. Thomas was in his late 40s, with weathered skin and calloused hands, a testament to years spent working with wood and stone. His hair was long and unkempt, flowing like wild vines down his back, while a scruffy beard framed his thoughtful face. He often wore simple clothes made from rough fabric that allowed him to blend into the earthy surroundings. Thomas found comfort in the simplicity of his life. Each day began with the first light of dawn filtering through the trees, casting golden rays into his hut. His mornings were filled with routines, brewing fresh herbal tea from plants he foraged nearby, tending to a small vegetable garden, and wandering along winding trails that crisscrossed through dense foliage. Nature was not just his backdrop. It was his companion. In this peaceful existence, he felt deeply connected to everything around him, the rustle of leaves, the call of distant animals, and even the quiet hum of insects. Despite his contentment in solitude, Thomas sometimes felt a twinge of loneliness creeping into his heart. The vibrant colors of sunsets often reminded him of laughter shared with friends long ago, while the haunting sounds at night made him long for companionship. Although he had chosen this isolated way of living to escape the noise of modern life, he still yearned for connection, an understanding that went beyond words. His days passed slowly but meaningfully, as each moment unfolded like petals on a flower. Each evening brought a sense of completion as he prepared simple meals from what he grew or gathered from nature's bounty. The crackle of firewood igniting under a pot spoke to him more than any conversation ever could. It filled his heart with warmth. Yet one fateful afternoon would soon change everything for Thomas. A heavy silence hung in the air as he sat outside on the wooden porch, his favorite spot, watching butterflies flit about in playful dances. Suddenly breaking through this tranquility came an unexpected sound. A low groan echoed through the trees. Curiosity piqued within him as he squinted towards where the sound originated. The shadows grew longer as dusk approached. He could hardly make out what it was at first. But then he saw her, a lioness dragging herself toward his hut. Her body moved weakly across the ground. Her usually majestic form now looked battered and frail. Thomas's heart raced as fear and concern blended into one overwhelming feeling. What could have happened to this magnificent creature? The lioness's coat shone dully in fading sunlight. Her breathing labored as bloodied patches marred her once proud appearance. Instinct told him to stay hidden, to turn away from danger. But compassion tugged at him more strongly than fear ever could. He rose slowly from his seat on the porch, his heart pounding not only from alarm, but also an undeniable urge to help this creature who seemed so lost and vulnerable. As she drew closer, Thomas realized that they were not so different after all. Both were searching for something, a sense of safety amidst chaos, and perhaps both were yearning for companionship in their silent worlds. That moment marked just the beginning. a moment when two lives would intertwine against all odds. In an unexpected twist, fate had laid out before them in this remote part of nature's embrace. As Thomas stood on the porch, his heart still racing from the sudden appearance of the lioness, he took a moment to observe her more closely. She was a majestic creature, yet her beauty was overshadowed by the pain evident in her movements. The once proud animal now dragged her body slowly across the ground. Each step seemed to cost her every ounce of strength, and a low, anguished groan escaped her lips with each labored breath. Her coat, usually a rich golden hue, was now dulled by dirt and matted with blood. Thomas could see patches of her fur missing, revealing angry red wounds that looked raw and painful. It pained him to witness such a powerful animal reduced to this state. His mind raced with questions about how she had come to be in such a dire situation. Did she escape from a predator? Was she injured while hunting? The thought made his heart ache for her even more. The sound of her claws scraping against the earth pulled him back to reality. He felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. He had to do something to help her. But fear still loomed in the back of his mind. What if she lashed out at him in pain or panic? What if she was too far gone to respond to any aid? He wrestled with those thoughts as he watched her struggle to reach him. With each passing moment, she moved closer to the shelter of his porch. Thomas noticed how she occasionally paused to catch her breath, her side heaving as if every inhale required tremendous effort. Her deep amber eyes met his for a fleeting moment, and in that gaze, he saw not just an animal's instinctive fear, but also a desperate plea for help. A silent cry that resonated within his very being. He took a deep breath and stepped down from the porch, each footfall seeming louder than the last in the stillness that surrounded them. The lioness's presence stirred something deep within him, a feeling that transcended the boundaries between man and beast. He was no longer just an observer. He felt compelled to act. "Easy there," Thomas murmured softly, hoping his voice would soothe her anxious spirit. He moved slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and calm as he approached. It was crucial not to startle her any further. He needed her to know he meant no harm. Each step brought him closer to the source of his concern, and the instinctive urge to back away battled with his compassion for this wounded creature. As he reached out a trembling hand, the lioness froze momentarily, her ears twitching as she assessed this new threat, or perhaps this new ally. Thomas could feel the heat radiating off her body, a stark contrast to the cool evening air that enveloped them both. He was almost close enough to touch her now, but still, doubts echoed in his mind. Would it be safe? Could he tend to her wounds without putting himself at risk? Yet as he gazed into those fearful yet trusting eyes, he knew he couldn't turn away. Something about this moment felt destined, a chance meeting that could change both their lives forever. As if sensing his empathy, the lioness began to relax slightly. She lowered herself onto the ground before him, surrendering to exhaustion as she tucked her paws beneath her body. Her breathing remained heavy, but steadied just enough for Thomas to notice the spark of strength still flickering within her, a will to survive. In that instant, he realized how deeply connected they were despite their differences. Both were seeking solace from pain, his loneliness mirrored in her injuries. Gathering courage, Thomas knelt beside her and took a closer look at the wounds on her body. She flinched at first as he extended his hand cautiously towards one of the cuts on her leg, but didn't pull away. Thomas gently brushed aside some dirt and debris from around the gash. It was deep but appeared free from infection, a small blessing in this tragic circumstance. He understood that time was of the essence, This lioness needed care quickly, or she might not survive through the night. With determination ignited within him, Thomas returned inside the hut for supplies, the tools he'd need for what lay ahead. And as he turned back around, he felt an unspoken bond forming between him and this unexpected visitor in his life. In that moment of urgency and concern came hope for both creatures trapped in their own struggles against fate. As Thomas knelt beside the injured lioness, a whirlwind of emotions coursed through him. He had never expected to find himself in a situation like this. The initial shock of witnessing the majestic creature now at his mercy swept over him like a wave, leaving him vulnerable in the face of fear, curiosity, and compassion. Fear gripped him as he thought about what it could mean to approach a wild animal that could easily turn aggressive if alarmed or cornered. Thomas knew the power and ferocity of lions. They were kings of the jungle with claws that could tear through flesh in an instant. What if she saw him not as a helper, but as a threat? His heart raced at the thought, yet his instinct was to suppress those fears and push forward. He took a fortifying breath, trying to steady his pounding heart. What if she attacked? He wondered, envisioning her powerful limbs poised to defend herself. But another part of him, the part that sensed her desperation, argued that this lioness needed him at that moment. Their worlds had collided in an unexpected way, creating an opportunity for connection that both must seize. Curiosity bubbled within him as he closely studied her once pristine coat, now dulled by dirt and pain. How did such a magnificent beast come to be in this state of suffering? He pondered the life she must have lived before this injury befell her. Was she once part of a pride, known for her strength and grace? Or had she been wandering alone in search of food and safety? Each question deepened his interest, but also intensified his worries, pulling him back and forth between compassion for her plight and the trepidation of approaching her vulnerable form. Thomas's inner turmoil continued as he grappled with the decision to stay away or step closer. The tension between fear and compassion seemed like a dark storm brewing within him. Should he protect himself by maintaining distance? Or should he embrace the better part of humanity that called for assistance? The time for hesitation was fleeting. Each moment away from the lioness felt like a missed opportunity to act when she needed someone. Finally, driven more by empathy than fear, Thomas made his choice. He moved closer, soothingly murmuring to the lioness in hopes of calming her anxious disposition. His voice was low and gentle, reflective of his intent, to assure her he meant no harm. As he stood over her, he could see the depth of her amber eyes filled with exhaustion, but also an unmistakable spark of hope. He reminded himself that they were two beings navigating their own struggles. Hers was physical pain, while his was emotional conflict. There was something uniquely beautiful in this shared experience. The vulnerability of life could so easily bind them together. As he extended his hand cautiously towards her, Thomas felt a surge of connection amid uncertainty. Would she accept his touch? Would she respond kindly rather than defensively? His heart thudded in his chest with every breath he took, each inhalation full of anticipation. When their eyes met again, there was a momentary pause where fear shifted on both sides. Thomas could see the lioness's body relax just slightly while she assessed this stranger before her. This man who dared to approach despite the danger written across her injured frame. The trust it took for them both to be so open felt monumental yet fragile. Suddenly, understanding washed over him like warm sunlight breaking through cloudy skies. It was not merely about healing wounds. This moment encompassed the essence of life itself. A choice between fear and healing, solitude and companionship. Driven by compassion overflowing within him, Thomas lowered himself closer to her level. His palms grew clammy with anticipation as he fought against self-doubt. He wanted desperately to help this beautiful creature lean back from the edge of despair into safety once again. In that fleeting instant where fear met compassion, clarity emerged. The realization that sometimes it takes courage to confront one's own feelings in order to forge connections that could transform lives forever. So, without a second thought, he leaned forward into action, but not just for himself or even just for her, rather for the hope they could find together amidst their struggles. With a deep breath to steady himself, Thomas began to approach the lioness. His heart raced in his chest as he took slow, deliberate steps, aware of the fragile balance between bravery and caution. Each footfall on the wooden porch echoed in his ears, heightening the tension in the air around him. It felt as though both he and the lioness were suspended in that moment, both wounded in their own way, yet searching for solace. His mind swirled with scenarios as he drew nearer. What if she panicked? What if she saw him as a threat instead of a potential ally? The image flashed in his mind of her powerful claws and sharp teeth, a primal reminder of her wild nature. He remembered the stories he'd heard about injured animals striking out when they felt cornered, and fear tinged his courage momentarily. But another part of him urged him forward. He couldn't abandon her to suffer alone. She deserved a chance at recovery just as much as he desired companionship. As he focused on her, he noticed that her amber eyes were wide with pain, but also with a piercing intelligence that seemed to evaluate him. It struck him then that she was not just a feral beast. She was a creature capable of understanding, and perhaps even trust. Knowing he had to remain calm, Thomas lowered his body closer to her level as he moved. He spoke softly, his voice steady but low enough not to startle her. "It's okay," he said, trying to convey reassurance through the gentleness of his tone. "I won't hurt you." Each word felt like a thread connecting them, weaving hope into the fabric of fear that surrounded them both. As he got closer, Thomas could see every detail of her injuries, deep gashes and bruises marring her golden fur. The sight tugged at his heartstrings and ignited an endless well of compassion within him. He didn't belong to a world where wild lions roamed free. He belonged to a realm where they lived in stories and videos. Yet here was this lioness, vulnerable and real, reminding him that connections could flourish beyond boundaries he had once deemed insurmountable. Thomas hesitated for just a moment before reaching out a trembling hand toward her leg, careful not to startle her further. He wanted so badly to touch her, to offer some form of comfort, but uncertainty lingered at the back of his mind. Would she accept his hand as an invitation, or recoil from it? His pulse quickened as he waited for her response. The lioness instinctively flinched when his fingers made contact with her fur, but instead of pulling away, she locked eyes with him again, her gaze revealing not only fear, but also a glimmer of understanding. At that moment, a bridge formed between them, one built on the acknowledgement of their shared pain and longing for connection. He could feel the warmth radiating from her body beneath his fingertips. It was grounding and real. This wasn't just an animal in need. It was a living being who had struggled for survival, much like he had in his own solitary life. They were both navigating their paths through hardship. She through physical wounds and battle scars, and he through emotional isolation. As he gently brushed aside dirt from one of her wounds, Thomas's determination solidified. He realized there was no turning back now, not after making this connection, not after feeling the flickering flame of hope reignite within both their hearts. This lioness had dragged herself all this way seeking help, and now it was up to him to rise to the occasion, to be the ally she needed. Yet even amid this resolve, doubt laced through his thoughts like shadows creeping across an afternoon sky. Could he truly provide the care she required? Would he be able to treat those wounds without putting himself at risk? As these anxieties swirled, Thomas embraced them rather than shying away. They were part of the fragile tapestry they were weaving together. The world felt as if it had shrunk to just him and this lioness in that space. The wilderness fading away around them until it became nothing but background noise on this stage set for compassion and courage. With renewed determination igniting within him, Thomas prepared himself for what lay ahead. A journey not only towards healing for the lioness, but also towards self-discovery through the act of kindness amidst uncertainty. With a deep breath, Thomas focused on the task at hand as he knelt beside the lioness. The air around them carried the earthy scent of damp soil and wild grass, mingling with the faint, metallic tang of blood that had seeped from her wounds. He could hear gentle rustling in the underbrush, but his attention centered solely on the creature before him. Cautiously, he reached out to examine her injuries more closely. Thomas placed his trembling hands on her leg, cautiously brushing away dirt and debris with reverence, as if each touch could shift the delicate balance between life and death. The strands of her matted fur felt coarse against his fingers, a stark reminder of her struggle against whatever had inflicted this pain upon her. As he leaned in closer, he could see the deep gashes running along her flank, a brutal mix of jagged edges and raw flesh that made his stomach churn. The lioness let out a soft whimper when he touched one particularly tender spot. Thomas paused for a moment, looking into her amber eyes that flickered with both fear and vulnerability. "I know it hurts," he whispered softly, hoping his voice offered some comfort amid her agony. Her gaze seemed to communicate an understanding. She was aware that he was only trying to help. As he examined the wounds further, Thomas noticed how the blood had dried into crusty patterns against the golden fur. The contrast between her natural beauty and the horrific sight before him broke his heart. Each wound told a story of survival and hardship, stories that echoed his own feelings of isolation and yearning for connection. He took a deep breath to steady himself, forcing back the wave of nausea that threatened to overwhelm him. He had to be strong for her. He had to push through the discomfort and fears swirling within him. Gritting his teeth, he felt determination seize him. This lioness deserved every ounce of care he could give. Gathering his thoughts, Thomas shifted his focus to her breathing. It was labored, yet steady. A flicker of hope in an otherwise dire situation. Seeing the rhythm of her breaths gave him strength, reminding him that she was still fighting and deserved a chance to recover. He gently lifted her leg to better assess the damage. Noticing how she flinched slightly but did not pull away from his touch, strengthened his resolve. "You're brave," he murmured, admiration filling his heart as much as concern. Despite her injuries, there remained an undeniable spirit in her eyes, one filled with an indomitable will to survive against all odds. Taking care not to press too hard on any injured area, Thomas carefully wiped away additional dirt and examined each gash meticulously. He noted that many of the wounds were bleeding freely, while others had formed scabs. Some looked infected with angry red edges that radiated like flames around the cuts. The sight made his stomach twist with worry about what kind of treatment she would need. "This isn't just scratches," he thought frantically, realizing that these wounds would require more than a simple bandage. It would take time and dedicated care to ensure proper healing. More than anything else, she needed food and water to regain strength. He suddenly felt overwhelmed by the weight of this responsibility pressing down on him like heavy stones. Yet amid the chaos of emotions swirling inside him, determination mingled with fear. He found clarity in purpose. This was not merely about tending to physical wounds. It was about forging a bond built on trust between them. The very act of caring would transform them both. Feeling an urgency to get started on finding supplies, Thomas rose abruptly but kept glancing back at the lioness, who watched him intently as though gauging whether he would return. A part of him hesitated as he turned away. Leaving her side felt like abandoning someone in need. But he understood that gathering resources was necessary for their survival. "Stay strong," he whispered again, offering one last reassuring look before retreating toward the hut where hope awaited in the form of first aid supplies, the tools he needed to heal not just her wounds, but also their weary hearts yearning for companionship amidst adversity. As he stepped through the doorway into his humble abode, determination surged within him once more. They were two souls drawn together by fate, and he vowed they would emerge from this darkness stronger than ever before. The bond they were forming amidst uncertainty resonated deeply within him, igniting a spark of purpose that would guide both their journeys toward healing. As Thomas stood at the threshold of his hut, staring out at the lioness, a whirlwind of emotions swirled within him. His heart pounded with uncertainty and fear for her safety, but it was also filled with resolve. He took a moment to reflect on what had brought him to this point, a decision that would change the course of both their lives. The image of her dragging herself toward him haunted his mind. She embodied a spirit that resonated with his own struggles of solitude. In the face of danger, she fought to survive. Now, he was faced with a choice: to remain in the safety of his solitude, or to step forward into the unknown. As he caught another glimpse of her wearied form, the sight ignited an unyielding spark within him. This lioness needed help. The fear that gripped him felt almost paralyzing. Visions of past encounters with wild animals flashed before his eyes, of their instinctual reactions and unpredictable nature. Yet beneath that fear lay an aching empathy he could not ignore. He recalled moments in his own life when he had longed for help, to be seen and understood, especially during times of weakness. The thought that this lioness might be crying out for compassion stirred something deep inside him, urging him to take action. Not hesitating any longer, Thomas turned back toward the hut and entered in search of supplies, the tools needed to care for her wounds. He rifled through boxes and drawers filled with first aid items he'd gathered over time: bandages, antiseptics, and salves he knew would be essential in tending to her injuries. As he gathered each item, he felt a sense of purpose swell within him. This was more than convenience. It was about investing himself in another's well-being. He emerged from the hut clutching an assortment of supplies tightly against his chest as if they were lifelines ready to bridge their two worlds. The world of man and beast intertwining against the backdrop of nature's unforgiving land. The courage he found surged forward like wildfire as he approached her once more. "I'm coming," he reassured softly, though it was as much for himself as it was for her. Stepping closer felt like traversing a tightrope between danger and compassion. A journey where every instinct told him to tread carefully, while every instinct born from empathy drove him to leap boldly into action. When he reached her side again, Thomas knelt near the lioness one more time and laid out the supplies on the ground beside them. Bandages were neatly rolled next to antiseptic bottles that gleamed under sunlight, filtering through nearby leaves. Seeing them there somehow made everything feel tangible and real. From fear transformed into bravery through concrete actions taken in response to suffering. Grasping her paw gently with one hand while reaching for a clean cloth with the other, he began carefully wiping away dirt around one particularly nasty gash on her leg. As soon as he brushed against her tender skin, she let out a soft whimper but did not pull away. Her trust indicated she recognized his intentions amid pain. In those moments spent tending to her wounds, Thomas realized walls were crumbling between fear and empathy inside himself. No longer paralyzed by uncertainty, courage fueled every decision he made now. Not simply protecting himself, but rather embracing vulnerability. Helping required bravery. It prompted him forward beyond comfort zones created by isolation. He gently treated one injury after another while speaking soothing words meant to calm both their racing hearts. "You're brave," he said again softly, as if imparting strength through every gentle touch imposed upon her lacerated skin. A reminder that together they could weather this storm. Then came clarity, a realization. Bravery is not absent of fear, but is instead defined by how one chooses to act despite it. It's about recognizing urgent calls for support when they arise, about being willing to step outside oneself and take chances even when faced with uncertainty. All propelled by compassion, weaving hope into existence among two souls, once adrift alone in their struggles against fate. Determinedly pressing on amidst lingering doubts still swirling within him like autumn leaves caught in windstorms outside. They walked together towards healing forged through shared experience. A bond growing ever stronger. This moment marked a true turning point, not just in caring for an injured animal, but indeed reflecting growth within his spirit, propelled forth from simple yet profound acts, driven by raw humanity's connection unveiled before them, both amidst adversity's dark embrace. With supplies gathered, Thomas settled beside the lioness, his heart racing with both anticipation and concern. He laid out the materials on the ground, bandages, antiseptic, and a soft cloth, and found himself momentarily captivated by the creature before him. Despite the pain etched into her expression, there was a gracefulness about her, a reminder of the strength she possessed. Taking a deep breath, he began to work. Thomas gently grasped her leg, cradling it as if it were fragile glass. The warmth of her body seeped into his fingertips, grounding him as he wiped away dirt and dried blood. She flinched slightly but quickly settled back down, allowing him to continue. It was a small gesture of trust that filled him with hope. "You're doing great," he whispered, aiming to soothe her with his words. As he applied antiseptic to the first gash, the lioness let out a low growl that rumbled through the air, a warning mixed with discomfort. Thomas froze for a moment, realizing how much pain she must be enduring. "I know it stings," he said softly, his voice steady yet gentle. "But it'll help you heal." In between treating her injuries, he tried to engage her with light conversation, sharing bits about his life in the hut, how he spent his days wandering the woods and watching wildlife. "You wouldn't believe the colors of the sunsets here," he said with a hint of a smile. "They're like paintings in the sky." As he spoke, he noticed how her gaze flickered towards him. She seemed to listen intently. It was as if she understood him beyond words. He continued working on her wounds, taking care not to press too hard against the sensitive areas that made her flinch. Each bandage he wrapped around her leg felt like a thread stitching their bond closer together. The lioness watched him with those soulful amber eyes, filled with both wariness and a flicker of understanding. Thomas could feel their connection deepening. They were both vulnerable, yet willing to trust one another, despite their circumstances. After treating one particularly deep cut on her flank, he paused to catch his breath. Sweat trickled down his brow as he looked at her bruised body lying before him. "You're such a fighter," he murmured, brushing a strand of fur away from the wound. "I can tell you've been through so much." In that moment of shared vulnerability, something shifted between them, a silent acknowledgement that they were both seeking healing. He reached into his supplies for more fresh bandages when he noticed the lioness's head turned slightly towards him, as if inquiring what was next. She seemed more relaxed now, lying on her side with her eyes half closed, yet still alert enough to know he was there. He felt a sense of accomplishment swell within him as he realized she was becoming accustomed to his presence. As he worked on another injury, Thomas couldn't help but admire her resilience. She embodied strength amidst adversity. Each small interaction, the way she shifted slightly when a bandage hurt, or how her body seemed to relax each time he spoke soothingly, felt monumental. They were no longer just two isolated beings. They were companions navigating through pain and healing together. "Hang in there," he said as he finished wrapping up her arm and set aside the last of the bandages. "We're going to get through this." Encouraged by his own words, Thomas felt lighter inside. Compassion had ignited something within him that had long been dormant. Feeling moved by the moment, Thomas gently rested a hand on her shoulder as if to offer reassurance. The lioness glanced up at him, their eyes locking in what felt like an unspoken promise, a pact formed through shared struggles and newfound trust. In that fleeting instant, he realized their connection transcended mere survival. It was about understanding and compassion woven through their experiences. Finally finished with her injuries, he took a step back to assess his work. A medley of bandages covering the worst of her wounds, while hints of sunlight danced across them like blessings from above. She looked at him again with weary but trusting eyes. And for the first time since their encounter began, Thomas felt an overwhelming sense of hope wash over him. As they sat together in the fading light of day, an unbreakable bond forged from bravery and empathy surged between them, one that would guide them both toward healing amid the wilderness's untamed embrace. With each passing moment spent in each other's presence, they were not just mending wounds, but also stitching together lives once marked by isolation into something beautiful and intertwined. Days turned into weeks as the lioness began her slow journey toward recovery, each day marked by small improvements that filled Thomas with hope. The once bleeding gashes had scabbed over, and her fur began to regain some of its former luster. No longer did she merely drag herself to the food and water he provided. She would rise slowly and meet his gaze, a flicker of determination lighting her amber eyes. Every morning, Thomas marveled at the bond deepening between them. He often prepared meals, simple offerings like pieces of raw meat he found during his foraging trips, setting them out just beyond his porch. At first hesitant, the lioness would approach cautiously, ensuring the path was safe before she dared to eat in his presence. But gradually, she grew more comfortable, allowing him to watch as she enjoyed each bite with a quiet grace. One afternoon, while she rested under the canopy of trees that shaded the area around the hut, Thomas took a moment to savor the gentle sound of her breathing. He sat nearby, sketching her in a worn notebook, an impulse that surprised him, considering how little he'd felt inspired to create in years. Capturing the strength she exhibited in her recovery became both a tribute and a reminder of their shared journey. His pencil moved freely across the page as he sought to embody her resilience. During those quiet moments, he'd talk to her softly about random thoughts that crossed his mind or describe the world outside. A hawk soaring high above, the way flowers bloomed on the edges of the forest path, or how vibrant sunsets painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Each word felt like threads weaving them closer together, creating a tapestry of camaraderie amid healing. The lioness responded in subtle ways. Sometimes she'd shift her position, as if acknowledging his presence and responding to his words. Other times, she'd stretch out languidly, exposing a patch of golden fur for him to see, her silent way of inviting him into her world. These exchanges slowly transformed from one-sided remarks into moments filled with shared understanding. They were no longer two solitary beings, but rather companions learning to trust one another. Thomas began to notice the ease with which she accepted his touch. Gone were the days of hesitant flinches when he needed to check her wounds. Now, when he approached her with gentle hands to brush something away or apply a soothing balm, she would lean into him slightly. A beautiful symbol of trust forming between them that surpassed mere survival. One sunny afternoon, Thomas sat beside her, leaning against the rough bark of a large tree as he observed her playing with a fallen branch, her playful swipes full of life. For a moment, it felt as if they shared an unspoken agreement, a moment of joy in their newfound environment. Laughter bubbled forth from Thomas without reservation as he watched, reveling in this movement now unfettered by pain. In that instant, he realized that each passing day brought its own milestones. Those casual moments strung together became markers of their growing friendship. Their bond represented not just healing, but an understanding that transcended words. They were learning what it meant to trust and nurture one another's journey. As days continued to unfold under the sun-drenched sky, glimpses of her bold spirit began to emerge more vibrantly. She would venture farther from the hut each day, exploring her surroundings with the natural grace that had been momentarily stifled by injury. Though still cautious, she started patrolling areas further away from him, while occasionally casting glances back, as if seeking reassurance from the man who had cared for her through pain. One evening, as twilight painted the horizon with hues of deep violet, Thomas noticed a profound change within her demeanor. A calm confidence radiated from her as she sat alertly beside him. It was then he realized that their lives had merged distinctly. Each thought exchanged between them signified meaningful growth. That night, after finishing his evening chores, Thomas parked himself on his familiar spot at the porch and called gently to her. The lioness padded silently toward him and lay down, a peaceful look painting across her face as she relaxed in his presence. Underneath a shimmering blanket of stars above them, it felt like an undeniable truth. They had found refuge in each other's hearts, a duo bound by empathy and care amidst nature's wild embrace. The path ahead might still hold challenges, but within, Thomas existed an unyielding assurance. Together, they would navigate whatever came next. Not only as caretaker and patient, but as true friends drawn together by life's intricacies, forging bonds amidst adversity and healing hand in paw. As days turned into weeks, the experience of caring for the lioness became a profound catalyst for change in Thomas's life. It was a journey that reshaped his perspective, not just on nature, but also on himself and the world around him. The shy, reclusive man, who had once found solace in solitude, now felt his heart expand with each passing moment shared with this majestic creature. In the beginning, Thomas approached the lioness with a mixture of trepidation and uncertainty, as if he were stepping onto foreign ground. However, witnessing her resilience through her slow recovery instilled a newfound appreciation within him for the wildness of nature and the strength of its inhabitants. He recognized that survival was not simply a matter of instinct. It was also about forming connections. Each gentle nudge from her reminded him that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength. A theme that resonated deeply within his own heart as he learned to embrace his emotions. As time passed, Thomas began to see the lioness as more than just a wild animal. She became a symbol of hope and possibility. The way she slowly regained her confidence mirrored his journey toward opening up. Her cautious steps around their shared space echoed his own hesitations about forging relationships with others. The moments they spent together sparked reflections on how often he had shied away from connections in the past due to fear and discomfort. There were days when they would explore together, with Thomas venturing out at dawn to watch the sunrise while the lioness meandered nearby. Silent, yet ever watchful, she had begun to roam farther into the woods, her golden coat shimmering in the sunlight as she pranced playfully amid the tall grass. It brought Thomas joy to see her thrive, and in turn, it nudged him to confront his own long-buried desires for connection. Each interaction with the lioness served as an unspoken lesson in trust. The deeper their bond grew, the more he understood that trust is built over time, through reliability, empathy, and shared experiences. This understanding transcended beyond his relationship with her. It started seeping into how he perceived people he had distanced himself from in the past. One late afternoon, as they sat side by side under the expansive sky filled with strokes of pink and orange from the setting sun, realization washed over him like gentle waves lapping against a shore. The lioness looked at him with calm knowingness, and in that gaze, Thomas felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. He recognized that both of them had been marked by pain, yet chose to push forward. Their time together had illustrated how healing is most potent when shared. This transformative journey painfully unveiled Thomas's own emotional scars of isolation, his yearning for companionship, a longing he hadn't acknowledged before this remarkable encounter. The time spent with the lioness encouraged him to confront those wounds, rather than bury them deeper within himself. He began to understand that embracing vulnerability could lead to far greater rewards than remaining barricaded behind walls constructed by fear. He reflected on how relationships, whether with animals or people, thrived on communication and understanding. Just as he had learned to speak softly to the lioness, so too would he need to communicate openly with others when given the chance. It was a radical departure from his previous self-imposed isolation. He began envisioning possibilities beyond those thick woods surrounding his hut. As months passed, Thomas made conscious efforts to connect with those outside of his secluded life. He ventured into town more often, rekindling old relationships while cautiously forging new ones. Each small step felt monumental as he embraced openness and sought healing not just for himself, but for others as well. Through the lens of caring for the lioness, he witnessed nature's wisdom about vulnerability and connection firsthand. It equipped him with unique insights into trust and compassion, lessons he promised himself never to forget. The lioness eventually returned fully regained strength and confidence, embodying grace against the backdrop of wild beauty around them, a reminder of all they'd weathered together. Though she would soon journey on her way back into nature's embrace where she belonged, Thomas now understood that their bond transcended physical presence. They would always carry each other's stories within them. In sharing their paths during this extraordinary chapter together, both had changed irrevocably. Thomas emerged from this experience not just as a caretaker, but as a man redefined by love's capacity for healing. With a heart now wide open to new adventures that awaited him beyond solitude's confines, and into vibrant connections pulsing amid life's great tapestry. The day had finally come when the lioness, once a mere shadow of her former self, stood tall and proud before Thomas. The sun streamed down through the leaves, casting a warm glow on her golden coat that shimmered with vitality, the embodiment of recovery. She had regained the strength to roam freely and explore the wilderness surrounding the hut. But now, as she poised at the edge of his porch, Thomas felt a bittersweet heaviness settle in his heart. He could hardly believe how far she had come. The once wounded animal that had dragged herself to his doorstep was now full of life and energy, her spirit undeniable. Yet this moment was laced with inevitability. He knew she was ready to return to the wild. It was in her nature to roam free, and he had always understood that healing meant more than mending physical wounds. It meant embracing one's true self. As she took a few tentative steps away from him, Thomas felt an ache in his chest. His heart swelled with pride at her recovery, while simultaneously breaking at the thought of her departure. From their time together, he had gained so much: a renewed perspective on vulnerability, trust, and companionship. It felt surreal to think that this lioness had transformed not just herself, but him as well. "Hey there," he called softly, voice trembling as he crouched near her. She paused and turned her head slightly, meeting his gaze with those deep amber eyes that held such wisdom. In that moment, he reflected on every hour they spent together, the moments of laughter when she playfully batted at fallen branches, and the quiet times when they simply sat side by side under an expansive sky filled with stars. Thomas reached out a hand tentatively, as if trying to capture one last memory of their bond in that moment. "You've taught me so much," he whispered with sincerity, feeling emotion surge within him like waves crashing against the shore. "You showed me what it means to really live again, to open my heart after so long." The lioness took another small step forward before hesitating, as if sensing his reluctance to let go. There was a deep understanding between them, a wordless acknowledgement that transcended the boundary of species. They were two souls who had journeyed through pain and emerged stronger together. Now they faced the next chapter apart. As she moved forward into the fading light of day, Thomas felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, blurring his vision momentarily. He fought against them. This wasn't a farewell filled with sadness, but rather a celebration of all they had shared. "Go on," he encouraged gently, wiping away a stray tear. "You're meant for so much more than this place." The lioness paused again, looking back over her shoulder as if to say goodbye in her own way, a gesture filled with grace that echoed their time together. He could almost hear an unspoken promise in her gaze. They would carry each other's stories in their hearts forever. As she ventured deeper into the woods, where sunlight filtered through branches like gold dust cascading onto forest floor, Thomas felt an overwhelming peace envelop him, despite the ache of loss. She belonged among the wild. It was where she thrived best, where instinct guided her steps and freedom awaited. He rose slowly from his spot on the porch and watched until she disappeared from view entirely. The weight in his heart shifted gradually from sorrow to gratitude. He realized that their connection would remain steadfast, even across distances separating them, an indelible mark on both their lives. In letting her go, Thomas discovered something profound about love. That true affection sometimes meant setting someone free rather than holding them close. Their shared experience had bestowed countless lessons upon him. Trusting others again, embracing vulnerability without fear, and reveling in moments spent together under nature's embrace. For days after her departure, he felt her presence linger in subtle ways, like morning sunlight piercing through trees or gentle breezes whispering secrets across fields. It became clear that she had not truly left him. Rather, she had forged a new path for both their futures, one where healing continued despite distance. With renewed determination simmering beneath his skin, Thomas vowed to honor their time together by remaining open-hearted, ready for whatever came next, be it reconnecting with old friends or welcoming new relationships into his life. His experiences with the Lioness transformed him irrevocably. Through healing another soul, he healed himself too. He stood on the porch one last time before turning back toward his hut, a newfound resolve pulsing within him like lifeblood filled with possibilities yet unseen. Ready for adventure in life's vast tapestry, woven by connection and compassion, echoing all around him once more. After the Lioness's departure, Thomas pondered the profound transformation that had unfolded before him. Each day since that moment had unraveled new layers of understanding, reshaping how he planned to live moving forward. The bond they shared was a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of all living beings, and the richness that emerges when one chooses to engage with life rather than retreat from it. In the days that followed, he felt an undeniable shift within himself. No longer did thoughts of solitude bring comfort or solace. Instead, they served as reminders of a time when walls had kept him isolated from vibrant connections. The rescue and healing journey of the Lioness had revealed to him the beauty in vulnerability and the strength found in forming relationships. Not only with animals, but also with people. Motivated by this newfound perspective, Thomas began actively seeking out ways to embrace wildlife around him. His morning rituals shifted from mundane tasks to meaningful experiences. He would rise early, often taking walks along paths where he'd previously avoided contact with nature. His senses were heightened now. Every rustle in the underbrush held his curiosity. Every flicker of movement piqued his interest. He began watching deer graze in nearby meadows and listened attentively to birds sing their melodious songs at dawn. However, it was more than just observation. He found himself wanting to contribute positively to their lives as well. Inspired by his encounter with the Lioness, Thomas initiated small projects around his hut, creating bird feeders, planting flowers for pollinators, and even learning about local plants to create a small herb garden that would attract butterflies. Each careful action felt dedicated not just toward beautifying his surroundings, but as an expression of gratitude for the lessons learned from caring for a creature so fierce and free. Throughout these activities, Thomas also sought reconnections with people from his past, reaching out to old friends and neighbors in nearby towns. He invited them on hikes or offered evenings around a fire where stories could be shared beneath a starlit sky. With each interaction came laughter, warmth, and genuine conversation, the kind that ignited feelings long buried under years of isolation. As he engaged with others, Thomas discovered something remarkable. Vulnerability does not convey weakness. Instead, it fosters deeper connections with those who share life's journey alongside you. He realized it is through sharing struggles that trust is built, a truth epitomized during those evenings spent reminiscing under vast skies. Through his actions toward wildlife and rekindling human connections, Thomas not only transformed how he saw himself, but also began viewing every living being through a lens of appreciation and respect. There was a beauty in watching creatures thrive in their wild environments and being part of a community woven together by compassion and care. Months passed, and as autumn painted the landscape with warm hues of amber and crimson, Thomas felt more alive than ever. He often gazed into the distance where the lioness had roamed free, smiling at memories made together. The gentle, healing touch, poignant moments shared under abstract skies. On reflective evenings when silence enveloped the wilderness around him, he would find comfort in knowing he had become an advocate, not just for animals, but for connection itself. A budding force against isolation's grasp. This change echoed through every aspect of his life now. Whether helping save another injured creature or mentoring local children about nature's wonders, he embraced each opportunity fully. Thomas finally understood that true transformation lay not only in individual growth, but also in fostering relationships among all beings, human or animal, that share this earth together. The lessons imparted by that brave lioness redefined purpose. It breathed life into dreams previously subdued under doubt. As dusk set on one particular evening while preparing dinner after a fulfilling day, filled with conversations and laughter from friends gathered around the fire pit outside, the perfume of herbs wafting through air, he suddenly caught sight of movement at the edge of the woods where nature met frame once again. His heart raced as hope bloomed within. It was a reminder that life bridges distances. While they may not always walk side by side physically far apart, locations could still anchor cherished connections, and perhaps even open new adventures once again resonating between two souls forever transformed by their shared experience amid healing journeys together. As Thomas stood on the porch of his hut, gazing into the woods where the lioness had vanished, a deep sense of gratitude washed over him. The journey they had shared had taught him invaluable lessons about kindness, understanding, and the interconnectedness of life across all species. He felt compelled to reflect on the significant impact this experience had not only on him, but also on those who might hear their story. In a world often filled with division and misunderstanding, Thomas came to realize that compassion knows no boundaries. The connection he formed with the lioness transcended species. It served as a powerful reminder of how important it is to extend our hearts to all living beings. Each creature, whether it roams the wild or shares our homes, carries its own struggles and stories worth acknowledging. Just as the lioness had taught him to embrace vulnerability, he understood that every act of kindness could ripple out into something greater. He recalled their initial encounter, the fear, uncertainty, and deep instinctual urge to help. In those moments, they were both at a crossroads. She, fighting for her life, and he, battling his own isolation. It was in choosing to connect, rather than retreat, that healing blossomed for both of them. Thomas realized that this choice to engage deeply with another being could lead to profound transformations within himself and beyond. With this newfound perspective, Thomas felt an urgency to share the lessons he had learned with others. He envisioned creating community gatherings where people could come together to appreciate nature and recognize the importance of fostering connections with all forms of life. Each gathering could serve as a platform for storytelling, where individuals could share their experiences and draw parallels between their lives and the wild creatures they admired. As autumn transformed the landscape around him into a riot of colors, he began organizing events in nearby towns. He invited local families and children, hoping to inspire them to observe and appreciate the beauty of wildlife. During these gatherings, he would speak passionately about his time spent with the lioness, sharing how their bond had redefined his understanding of connection and empathy. He encouraged everyone to consider how their actions toward nature reflected their values towards each other. Kindness is not just a human trait, he would explain enthusiastically to the captivated audience. It's a universal language, one that can bridge gaps across species. His words resonated deeply in the hearts of those listening, igniting a spark of curiosity in kids and adults alike. by fostering a spirit of understanding and respect toward wildlife. Thomas believed they could cultivate a greater appreciation for life itself. He also initiated volunteer programs aimed at wildlife preservation and rehabilitation. Together with newfound friends from his community, they explored the surrounding areas, helping injured animals and planting trees to restore habitats. Each small act felt like a tribute not only to the lioness, but also to every creature that roamed the earth in search of safety and belonging. As winter approached, Thomas remained committed to bringing people together under shared values of love for nature. On particularly cold evenings, he would invite friends over to share warm meals around a crackling fire, recounting tales of bravery from both humans and animals alike. He was surprised by how much joy these gatherings brought, each story sparking laughter or inspiring thoughtfulness. This journey transformed him into more than just an advocate for wildlife. Thomas became a champion for connection itself. He came to understand that kindness nurtures resilience, both in animals facing adversity and in people rebuilding relationships after hardships. Through his actions, he aimed to inspire others to practice empathy in everyday life, to look beyond differences and extend compassion freely. One evening, as snowflakes began to fall softly from the sky outside his hut, Thomas wrapped himself in a blanket near the fire, feeling warmth radiate within him. The flickering flames reminded him of the light sparked by kindness, the flames that could ignite hope even in the darkest times. He closed his eyes for a moment, reflecting on how far he had come since that fateful day when the lioness appeared at his doorstep seeking help. Transformations often begin small, like gentle nudges from fate, but they grow into something powerful through choice and action, taken with love. In this new chapter of his life, Thomas promised himself to continue honoring their shared journey by embracing every opportunity for connection that crossed his path. As he welcomed each new day with open arms, he felt ready, not just for more adventures, but for whatever kindness awaited him next amidst nature's vast tapestry, woven together by countless living beings yearning for understanding and compassion.